Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SourceForge Product Demo Showcase. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Bo Hamilton, Senior Editor and Multimedia Producer here at SourceForge, the world's most visited software comparison site where B2B software buyers compare and find business software solutions. If you ever wondered how you could get your business all over the internet on video sites, podcasts, blogs, news sites, and social media automatically without hiring a full content team, then today's episode of the SourceForge Demo Showcase is for you. We're spotlighting AmpCast AI, which is designed to do exactly that. AMCast AI, it takes any topic or product you want to promote and it transforms it into multiple formats, interview style podcasts, long form videos, news articles, video shorts, and reels. There's things like infographics, slideshow presentations, blog posts, and social media posts. It's a long list of content. And then it automatically publishes this content across over 300 high authority websites, including platforms like Google News, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. You have your local Fox sites, you have Spotify, and major social media sites as well. It's really neat. Joining us to show us how this product and platform works is Chris Munch, the co-founder of Amplifier and one of the creators behind the AmpCast platform, as well as Jay Cruiz, CSO and head of partnerships and agency coaching. Chris and Jay, thanks for being here. I'm going to have you share your screen and just let you get right into it.
So yeah, thanks, Bo, for having me. And I'm here with Jay. And so we've been building this thing out for a long time, like over a decade, and it does so much stuff. I think the first thing is I'm just going to scroll down to this big, crazy diagram because, you listed out a bunch of stuff, which it does. And sometimes it's a lot to take in because this platform really does so much stuff. And so in essence, it's a platform to promote and grow organic traffic, multi-channel organic traffic from all sorts of places and sites. And so it does this, you have an idea, you have a topic, okay, and it's going to go through and it's going to create a slideshow or a flip book. It's going to create infographics, social posts, articles, an interview podcast, a short video reel, a blog post, and then a longer form video as well. And then when you've got all of that done, which is all AI assisted, okay, so, AI produces the whole thing, but we recommend a little bit of human editing in there, a little bit of the human touch, okay? And then it's going to automatically publish it then to over 300 sites and platforms. We can get into this RSS thing as well in a moment, which just opens up even more doors for those who are a bit more advanced. And then, this is on podcast networks like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's all across social media like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and it's posting a mix of all the different content formats across social media. You've got the news articles, okay, going out onto various news sites, Google News. You've got also the blog content going out to various blogs as well. You've got it going out to all sorts of video platforms, right? You then got the infographic going out to places where you can host images like Pinterest. And then you've got essentially the flipbook, the PDF being shared across document sharing sites and slideshow sites like SlideShare, right? And then with all of that then being done, you're growing your organic search traffic because a lot of this stuff just shows up in Google. And we'll talk about the strategy behind it as well as we dig in here, because the strategy is very, very important. Of course, like with any traffic platform, you can do it in a way which is very ineffective, or you can do it in a way which, just really blows up. So we'll talk a bit about that as well. It's building your brand and reputation here as well. It's going to improve ad performance, right? Because the first thing, I don't know about you, Bob, but what's the first thing you do when let's say you see an ad comes up on YouTube, you're interested in the product. What's something that you might go and do?
Well, I'm going to go to the website, of course. Click on it.
So some people click through, right? So a good percentage of people click through. I would say, if they're going to go through and buy, a good chunk of people will click through. But then even when they click through and they look at the product, what might you then do?
Well, I'll buy it.
You would just buy it? You would just outright buy it?
I might buy it. I might continue to investigate it, research it.
Okay. Yeah. And so that's the thing is most people will tend to do a little bit of research. Depends what it is, right? Some people say they'll just buy it, but a big percentage, and it's a majority of people will actually go and do their research. And so when you put out all of this content, and then when people do the research on your products, on what you have or what you sell, your services, whatever, you actually find that your ad performance improves because there's more content out there about you, right? So then, with the traffic, the better ad performance and so on, it's increasing sales, you're growing your social following. This stuff is going out on your YouTube channel or on a separate YouTube channel that you might set up so you can grow your YouTube audience. And so in the end, you're getting social traffic, video traffic, multimedia traffic, right? Search traffic, all this organic free traffic from all sorts of different sources. Okay, so that's kind of like the bigger picture here of what it does.
I love this visual representation. It really resonates with me because when I sit down and make a piece of content, usually it's a YouTube video, I will sit down and create an infographic of all the different shots that I plan to film. So this is great.
Yeah, and this is it. Is like, for example, like you have a YouTube video and you want to get more attention to that YouTube video, you want to repurpose it, then you can create it in all these different formats, right? And publish it then in all of these different places to drive that into the YouTube video. You can do the same with a blog post, with a sales page, with a product page, right? So whatever it is that you want to promote and draw attention to, then you can go ahead and do that. So to get into before I just jump in with the demo, so I'll be showing you how all this works, showing you the AI and everything behind it. But, essentially when it comes to getting organic traffic, it comes down to like a bit of a formula. Okay. And so this is quite simply, the volume, okay, and how often you're posting, okay, as well as, like the actual topic that you're posting, the quality of the content, and then if people are actually interested in the topic. So you could produce an article, but or a video, but no one's interested in what you're talking about. Or it could have massive interest, and it could be, hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people that's interested. And so these are the levers which essentially, can grow your traffic higher. And then these are underneath here, these are the limiting factors. Okay. And so most people understand these relatively well. Okay. Sometimes people make a mistake around the demand. Sometimes they don't do the quality that they need to. Sometimes they don't post enough, but this stuff is pretty straightforward. The limiting factors are often overlooked. And so, this is where your strategy will really make a difference to how much actual traffic you get. So competition is a limiting factor. So you could have a topic that's in massive demand, but if it's been covered thousands of times, it's going to be pretty saturated. It's going to be hard to raise above the noise, right? And so you have to pick topics that are ideally, at a level of competition that your particular brand can deal with. And that's set by your overall brand popularity. So it doesn't really matter if it's, say, TikTok or YouTube or Google. Popularity, authority, kind of the history of your content is what impacts how much reach it's going to have. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to see the different variables listed here, because I know when I first got started with YouTube, for example, again, it's like, that's my platform of choice really is, it was velocity was really the main, one of the main variables, because like you want to create a consistent schedule for followers to kind of know when your release cycle is, when your release cadence is, so they can kind of keep coming back for more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the reasons why that's, for example, relatively like important on YouTube is because if you're posting regularly on, say, a platform like YouTube, right, or social media, then you're going to gradually grow your popularity because people are able to keep coming back and they have the expectation, right, of more content rather than, say, forgetting about you and disappearing. So, anything that you do that grows your audience, like here on the top, okay, is going to increase your popularity over time. And then you're going to be able to gradually take on more competitive topics. Okay. Every algorithm is a little bit different, but this is ultimately how it works. So picking a topic is very, very important. So we do have like a few tools built into the platform of what topics that you should pick. Okay. But this goes into quite a simple topic. I'm just going to show you the software just in a second. And then Jay, I think, is going to then take us through, how we pick topics, just like kind of like a simple kind of 3-step process of the whole thing. But just to give you a sneak preview here of the platform itself. Okay, so I'll just jump into this example. You can see it produces here news article, blog post, a podcast interview, a slideshow, an infographic, a video, okay, and it's all produced through AI and then published in hundreds of places. So I'll come back and show you this and a bunch of examples. I'll also show you some case studies here as well. But Jay, do you want to take us through like this, like how we plan essentially topics, and how we do our process that essentially allows us to not be tackling subjects that are too competitive, right? Where we can actually show up and get traffic, but meet all these criteria as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So good to be here, Bo. Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, good to be here. So let me just share my screen. I'm going to give you a high level overview without getting too technical. I'm going to leave that to Chris, and even then he's not going to get overly technical. But my diagram isn't going to look as in depth and crazy as Chris is, but I think it will be a little bit lighter. So we'll mix it up a little bit today for all the people on the call, or watching this video, I should say. But if I just draw everyone's attention to here, and if you can see the screen, right, Bo?
Yep.
So the first step, right, is, and this is the sort of the 10,000 foot view first, right? So you've got, and I'll go over the first step in a sec, because that's the most important element, in my opinion. I'm a little bit biased, but you'll see why that sort of lays the foundation for everything else. Whereas most people start off velocity, or they start off, looking at the brand authority and things like that, which is okay because it's a good starting point. But really, if you start in the right way, right, it's just like anything in life. If you set the foundation for a building, or you've got the right, plan in the gym, and you're eating the right foods, things tend to sort of fall into place, right? If that makes sense. So,
yep.
So if it's cool with you, let me just give you the overview real quick. Chris touched on this a little bit, and he'll go into the demo a little bit later. But ultimately, you want to start off by identifying questions, which I'll dig into in a second. But what research are customers actually doing before buying? And this is such a huge sort of topic in itself, right? But if we get this step right, and for anybody looking to create content out there, grow organic traffic, if you understand this one step, it's huge, right? So once you've got that, and you've got these questions, and often there are thousands of these questions out there that people ask, right? And then they're typed in lots of different ways, and they will become your topics ultimately. And there are so many hidden topics in any niche, like literally thousands of them, right? Which is super interesting. And that gives us a wealth of content to be created and to go after, and then repurposing and everything else, which I'll go into. So once you've sort of identified those questions, which most people do completely wrong, you then move to step 2, where we can create that content to answer those questions, right? So you get one question, becomes your topic, and then bam, we repurpose into articles, videos, podcasts. We've got podcast interviews now, which are super awesome. Chris will demonstrate that later if we've got some time. The infographics, the blogs, the social posts as well, because we can, reach out to your TikToks, your Instagrams, X as well, in the form of threads, which is awesome. So we're really diversifying, right, all this content, which adds to that brand authority that Chris touched on. But once we've done that, we then, if you don't publish your content, I mean, no one's going to see it. So, you can create the best piece of content in the world, right? Oscar worthy, if you like, in terms of, how beautiful it looks and how great it is artistically. But if it doesn't get out there, then no one sees it. So step 3 is bam, it's about publishing, right? And we publish to over 300 sites. We're talking the likes of YouTube, Google Podcasts. We've got, obviously, it appears on Google search itself, but then you've got Spotify, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and we've got hundreds of news sites as part of that. We've got Apple Podcasts as well as your own website as well. So whatever website you have, you can post onto that. And then the client site if you're reselling, right? So there's lots of opportunity here. And the depth is awesome. And then ultimately, this is why we're doing this, is because we want it to result in more traffic and more sales. And what you'll find is it correlates directly. The more posts you have, obviously, the more traffic you're going to get. But there is a big caveat to that. And then, we go back to step 1, which is if you identify the right questions and the right topics that are underserved, right, that have demand, but they've got less competition, right, but they're still within the buyer journey, that's the sort of, the 3 magic steps that form step 1 in itself, right? So does that make sense, Bo?
It does. Yeah. I think it's just interesting to think about how important each step is in the process. Obviously, if you're a content creator, you think about just the content, but publishing, huge. You got to get the message out. You got to get the reach But also step one, identifying the main questions. I remember I would go to YouTube and I would go to the search bar and I would just start searching things that I plan to create content around. And I would kind of see what the top results were and kind of tweak the titles and descriptions accordingly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Tweaking those for sure. And that's, this is, again, like we could talk about literally step one all day. You can ask Chris. I don't want to bore everyone on that. But
yeah, I mean, I think it's good, like with a little quick example as well, like of what you mean. Like you pick a product,
Yeah. So I'll do that now. So first of all, let me just go into step one a little bit further here. So we've created this piece of content on this, but it nicely explains it. So if it's cool with you, I'll just share this real quick. But this is about rhinoplasty, right? So if someone is looking to get into having a procedure done like this, there's sort of 4 main steps here, right? The first step, and people think, you're just going to search for something. Obviously not, because if you're identifying the questions and the topics, it comes down to awareness first. You have to be problem aware, where you might type in something like rhinoplasty, nose job, nose surgery, right? So you're capturing that market potential. Then the person might then go into the interest level, where they're looking at what types of rhinoplasty. So now, as an example, if I scroll down here, you can see we've got somebody called Taylor, right? And she's looking to, as part of the first level, which is a starting point, which is initial curiosity, but there's so many different things she's going to be looking for, right? For example, like I mentioned, some people might type in nose job, other people are typing in what is rhinoplasty. They might not even know, they might have heard about it. So, as soon as they sort of dig into this, an example of that is, can you fix a big nose without surgery? Because they're concerned, they're not quite sure if they're going to go ahead with it, but it's, that problem aware phase. And then if we scroll down, the next step here then becomes, I just go up and down a little bit, but the interest. So then she's sure she wants to get it done, right? So now she's looking at what types. So for example, if you go deeper into this, she might be looking at rhinoplasty for African American noses, which is very, very specialized, right? And then, starts to type in something around that. So here, it's the exploration stage, right? Where she's taking it seriously. And again, you've got the example here. And the goal is really to understand adaptation to specific features. And it's, you can see how she's going deeper into the buyer journey, which is exactly, the point we start from, which is the beautiful element of this. And so she's looking at what types, the African American nose, as I said, and then she moves into the research phase, right? This is the same as the diagram I showed above, so I can just go through it. But you've got, she's getting more and more serious, and now she's typing in stuff like, well, what's the recovery time? Like what recovery time can I expect? Maybe she's an athlete, maybe she wants to get back into her sports, or she wants to go back into, if she's at high school or college or whatever, or she's got a main sort of job. So things like, how long will recovery take for someone with my skin type? She's wondering what techniques help to achieve a natural look. Like this is becoming really beautiful, right? In terms of the depth of research here. There could be technique and outcome questions. What's the best rhinoplasty technique for this particular nose with a wide bridge? It could be open versus closed rhinoplasty for African American features. And in fact, I think Chris will go into this a little bit later, but the comparison questions are huge. Like cross niches, like it's unbelievable, especially with software. If you're comparing a piece of software or another one, the comparison
open source, closed source. Yeah.
People, like it's a big win for a lot of businesses where they compare their product versus others or compare competitors.
Yeah.
And people are doing that research, and essentially you're poaching, right? Yeah. So it's a great strategy, and I'll show you an example of this. But yeah, poaching from big competition is actually a really good strategy when it comes to comparison as well.
Especially,
and the idea here is Jay's just showing like just one example of how people go like very, very deep into the research before they buy.
Well, this is just one procedure, right?
Yeah.
And look how deep we're going, right? So, and anyway, just to finish it off real quick, rhinoplasty recovery time. So she's going into it, and then the final element is now finding a surgeon who can meet all those needs. And if you see, so most people are going to think, oh, rhinoplasty, is it that deep? Well, only when you search for it and you have that problem, does it become that deep, right?
Right.
Because it's a big one. So you got top rhinoplasty surgeon for African American patients. It could be in a certain area and a certain location, right? And then the geolocation becomes important. So that's a bigger example. But if we go back to this now, you can see that step one looks humble, it looks simple, but there's a wealth of topics and questions that are out there. And as a quick,
and the trick is, like with what Jay's shown you is, as you go down that pyramid, if you bring the pyramid back up on the screen here, is often at the top of the awareness level, it's super competitive.
Yeah.
As you move down into more specific things, the competition lowers, the buyer intent goes higher, and there's demand there. So, people looking to buy. So as you go further down, the conversion rates increase. So you can make money at every level. There's just certain sweet spots and certain topics which will work better. So, we've got really, really good at figuring this stuff out. A lot of it's kind of common sense of just thinking through what people will search for. But most people, what they do is they go into a tool, get a list of keywords, or ask ChatGPT for a bunch of topics, and they all get the same thing, and they're all competing for the same topics, and it doesn't work so well. So, actually thinking through this buyer journey really, really helps.
Yeah.
And there's different ways to go about this. So like Bo, you said, you go check on YouTube and, see what popular videos are. So that's also a great place to start for ideas. And one thing we do is we'll look for a popular video and then think, what questions do people ask after they watch that video? Because it often opens up ideas, and then they start, Googling things, checking out other videos and so on and so on. And it's just, and the idea is when people are doing that research, connect them with the right answer.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the health example with the rhinoplasty is really, is great, just because we've all been there, just with various health issues, or, we have a headache or whatever it might be. We start just going to Google or wherever it might be to start, researching essentially what it might be. And you have all these different questions, and because it's your health, because it's so personal, you just start getting deeper and deeper with the research.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, this is true of everything. It's like, even say we're like, you've got these over-ear headphones, so for me, I can't wear them because it gives me a headache just from pressing on my ears. It's like, I don't know, I guess I'm weak in some way, right? It's just a little bit of pressure and it's hurting me too much. So I need like the big over-ear headphones that go all the way around and don't touch the ears. So I search for, say, something really specific like that. And then you might have one certain feature, like certain bass, or, cutting out noise. And so like by the time you mix all of the personal preferences, you end up with quite a specific thing. So what I'll do now then is give you some examples of...
Yeah. So I'll just hand it over to you. And just before I do that, Chris, this whole thing was born out of a really interesting story, which was I spoke to a plastic surgeon in the US. We talked through the whole buyer journey element of this, and he was complaining, and he was saying, well, I'm not getting the right people who are serious. He was actually really like cheated, quite cheesed off. And I said, well, yeah, but you've been marketing this, and that's what most people want, right? Is, oh yeah, I want to rank for this and rhinoplasty and, have content that's seen for that. But he was frustrated because he's like, well, I don't want people doing that, because when they call me or they come in, they waste my time because they don't know what they want. I want people down here, right? And he did a very specific procedure as well for Asian noses. And that's what sort of spurred this, sort of kicked this off and motivated me to go after and create this piece. But it's so interesting, and how it applies to, across. And just really quickly, Chris, before I give it back, I did just a random ChatGPT. I asked it because behind me, you can see this. I'm obsessed with military history, by the way, so don't judge me. But I've got this Spartan brass helmet, right? Which I bought for decorative purposes to use in, to look cool in videos like this.
Rare as a toddler.
Yeah. When I have a baby, he's definitely going to be one of them. Yeah. But then I just went online, just randomly, use ChatGPT, and I asked it for top of funnel when people are doing their research in the beginning. Didn't even spell it properly, but there you go. And some of these are not great, but some of them are awesome. For example, you've got, how would a decorative brass Spartan helmet look in my office or my room or office? You've got what sizes are decorative Spartan helmets, shiny brass or more aged vintage looking. And then you've got, this one's good. Will the color change over time? Will it tarnish? Right? And what's the maintenance needed? Like, there's some really, really good questions here. And that's just me just doing a random bit of research for an everyday example.
And the problem with these ChatGPT outputs, so is some of these, they're interesting questions, but some of them, no one will ever ask these ever. Right? And so the AI doesn't really understand, like, hey, is someone really going to ask this question, or is this just kind of like made up? And so that's where you need to be, really, really careful, like when it comes to demand, competition and stuff like this. So using ChatGPT can be very risky for coming up with topic ideas. So we've seen a lot of websites, businesses that have come to us because they're in trouble with their organic. And then you go look at their website and their blog is just churned out ChatGPT topics. They went to ChatGPT, give me 100 topics for my blog. They went and published them, and then they're just really general. They're really vague. There's too much competition. But yeah, let's look into some real examples as well, because then it's gonna
we'll connect. So for sure, do you want to take the screen back, Chris? But I just thought I'd give you an everyday example in the questions, right? You dig deeper, and of course, like Chris said, there's a whole process here that we use to lock down these in-demand, low competition topics from the questions asked.
I appreciate you.
Have you taken the screen back, Chris?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, awesome.
So let's. So first of all, I'm just gonna throw something in here. So let's just say hair loss. So this is just one of our own like research tools. So this will help us come up with some topics. I'm going to throw hair loss in here. Is it something that I'm getting worried about as I get older?
That's why I'm wearing a cap too. So there you go.
Same.
And so we'll leave this just to run, just while I show you an example here. So let's jump in. Where was it? It was right here. There we go. Okay, so this one right here is a great example, right? So this is just like an example topic, which we've done as a news article, blog post, podcast, slideshow, infographic, video. And it does the social media posts. I'm going to show you all of this stuff as we go through. But if we just look at the topic here, right, it's covering a very specific thing here, which is aloe vera face cream with hyaluronic acid. Okay. And here without hydroquinone. Okay, so there's topics that people search for that are very, very specific. So here, someone wants a face cream. They want it with aloe vera, but they don't want this chemical, which is considered a poison. And so these are the type of things which people do search for, and there is demand. And if you just say aloe vera face cream, how many chemicals do people want to avoid? Okay, and if I go online and I read about some nasty chemical, and then I'm always using aloe vera cream, and then I see it as a listed ingredient, and I'm going to go look that up. And which particular chemical someone decides that they want to avoid might just depend on what YouTube video they saw, what influencer they were following, what article they saw, right? Could be lots and lots of different things which send people down all of these different routes, right? So this is like like a mock-up blog post here promoting the product. Okay, or news article here. So we can have a little look at the video right here, where it's talking about without having hydroquinone, but also containing hyaluronic acid. Okay, so you can adjust the titles and things as you see fit between each module, so everyone's a little bit different, targets a slightly different topic. But I'll just play this video here, so we can have a look just at how this comes out. And remember, this stuff is produced with AI. You can do some finishing touches to it yourself, just to get an idea of this would be like an example of say a YouTube short here, right, or an Instagram reel which is going out. So let me just hit play on this one.
The burn means it's working. In the 2000s, skincare was basically burning your face with several products. Girl, please, skincare shouldn't feel like torture, and you definitely shouldn't be that red after it. And while we've come a long way, some products still use harmful ingredients like hydroquinone. Think rashes, permanent skin discoloration, and more. So next time you grab a new skincare product, check the label and make sure it's hydroquinone free. Because the burn doesn't mean it's working, it just means it's burning your skin. The burn means...
And so, you could probably imagine, you catch a video like this on a YouTube short if you're following, beauty topics. And you could be building up a following from these sorts of videos because they're useful, interesting topics, and little pieces of advice. And from this, then you yourself would then be searching for creams without hydroquinone, right? So, it's also creating the demand at the same time, as well as being something, which will show up in Google, show up in YouTube, and so on and so on.
Right.
All right. So, is that like making sense like now how like this starts to...
It is. Yeah. It's interesting to have and also just to have all these different pieces of content all kind of in one convenient place, produced all at once with its own sort of, like you mentioned, the things are sort of tweaked, the titles and such are tweaked a little bit here and there, and you can kind of go in and tweak it with the human element, as you see fit, right?
Yeah. And, the interesting thing from this is an aloe vera face cream. And if you think, well, how many chemicals would you want to exclude, right? How many features might you want it to be like organic, natural ingredients? Okay. For women, for over 50s and so on and so on. And then you take, all the ingredients which you might want to have. You might want to have aloe vera with certain other, treatments or ingredients in there as well. So you've got all the different use cases, all the different, people look for themselves as a specific audience, like over 50s for women, things it should include, things it shouldn't include, and so on and so on. And when you start to think of all these combinations, just for the one product of this aloe vera face cream, remember, this could be aloe vera face cream that helps with wrinkles, with moisturizing, and so on and so on. When you start to take all of those combinations for one single product, you could be looking at hundreds, if not thousands of topics. And this is what most people don't realize. And what they do is they do content about aloe vera face cream.
Right.
And then it never gets seen because there's so much competition, right? And there's not really a unique angle or anything else when there's these hundreds and hundreds of unique angles which you could be covering.
Now, is there a fear of being maybe too specific? Like, is there a right balance you kind of try to strike?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Bo. So, that is a genuine issue. So, and that's why like using ChatGPT, for example, to come up with your topics can be so risky. Because if it is something that literally has no demand, it doesn't matter, right? If you're the front page of YouTube, if, the algorithm, wants to send loads of people to your video, but, no one's interested in that video, the algorithm is quickly going to learn, okay, let's, not show this to anyone else again. So, you have to make topics that are interesting, and also optimize, like this style here it's a different style to what is in the blog article. The blog article, for example, discusses and is more factual and why, and this is like a little bit more, let's say, sensational and a quick, fast pace of like, hey, this hydroquinone thing is something that's bad and has been banned in some countries and you shouldn't be using it. So there's a different style to it as well. But like 100%, you definitely need to pick stuff that has demand. Mm-hmm. And so, we have methods and we have training and stuff on how to do this. You can look, and use some tools which give you an estimate, but they're only an estimate. What I like to do is just go through the journey as a customer and then see if it makes sense, right? That they would search for these topics. And then you can look for some signals. I won't go into this today because it's like a whole other thing to go down, but we do have some tools which help with this stuff, right? So like I said, I've just used this niche pig tool, which goes out and sniffs some interesting topics here. So I put in hair loss, right? And so in here, I can look at, I put in a really broad niche, but it's going to help me, go very, very specific into, different products, sub niches, problems, things like this. And so, you've got here these laser hair caps, right? So like Brian Johnson, the guy who wants to live forever, I think he wears one of these. So they're getting a bit popular at the moment. And so like if we then take the say laser caps for hair growth. Okay, so we'll do laser hair growth caps. Okay. And we generate headlines. Then this tool is going to try and figure out some more specific topics which potentially have demand, which have buyer intent. So we'll come up with like a few ideas here. And so, this is like some of the ways that you can just come up with topics very, very quickly. When we do this, when we're working with a brand, in like a more hands-on way, we'll spend, quite a bit of time really digging into the industry to come up with a lot of topics, because it makes such a difference. It's like literally picking the right topics can 100x the results that you get. Right. It has a massive, massive impact. And just to show like what impact this can have, right? So this here is the growth of a site, that's getting, less than probably about 250 clicks, per day here, maybe only about 100 clicks per day. And, literally like 50xing its traffic, and it got up to around, this is over the Christmas period. So it bumps during Christmas and New Year as it's a fitness related product, then dips. So you can see it dipped here. the year before and dips again, but it's dipping, at like a massive level of traffic now, where it's gone from a few thousand visitors a month to 60,000 visitors per month here. And when we break out what's coming from the blog topics and what's going to the rest of the site, which has the product pages. And interestingly, the blog pretty much went from 0 to about 50,000 visits per month, and it was only across 393 blogs. Okay, so just shy of 400. And just off the blog traffic alone, which isn't the entire traffic of the site, this is based on their average sale price and their average conversion. This is, driving, about $1.5 million in sales. And across the entire site, that's like closer to 3 million. So, they're getting a massive return for, all of this content here that they've been producing. So then if we come back here and look at this, right, then it's coming up with some interesting topics. So it's coming up with, for example, potentially competing products, right, that you can review. Okay. And so, for example, there's Capillus Ultra versus competitors. Typically here would actually name, I'll zoom in a little bit, but typically here would name a competitor. So it would say like Capillus Ultra versus Theodome Pro. Okay. They're great topics. Okay. We encourage people to focus on this a lot in the content that they might put out. Right. And again, you can be careful where you distribute this to. So you're not, let's say, going to highlight your competitors on your own YouTube channel, but you might put it on your blog, which people aren't going to navigate to, but it will show up in Google. You might put it on a secondary YouTube channel. And so here you've got like these very, very specific topics, specific products, okay, that you could then look at, like if you're in this niche, right? Like here, like so Capillus Pro versus Capillus Ultra, right? I love these comparison topics, but there's a lot of good topics here to consider and look into. Okay, so when it comes to picking topics, there's in any industry, there's just hundreds and hundreds available. Okay, so if you're in the hair loss niche, right, and you're selling a hair loss product, you could be talking about all this stuff and also then presenting your product and your solution at the same time. And there's just, so many kind of sub niches and just different ideas that you can go through. And then it's just a case, right, of just, creating all of this content and all these formats and putting it everywhere. And if we just look here, just to quantify this a little bit. So this section here, this actually shows you how many visitors are coming from this type of comparison content. Okay. And in most industries, like even, when it comes to, say, we're working with a company on like debt consolidation, for example. And their best performing content is also comparing competitors and reviewing competitors, because the competitors are often, for most businesses, you're usually not the number one, you're the number two, the number three, right? Just naturally says, there's plenty of competition. There's only one number one, but plenty of people following. So then you can leverage all of those competitors. So here, we've got like comparing like one type of product to another, but also comparing one brand to another brand. Okay. To the point, where this is now driving about 10,000 visitors per month, but it's ridiculously high converting. Okay. So it's about 36% of the total blog traffic for the site. But it probably accounts for about 50 to 60% of the sales because the buyer intent is so high. So not all traffic is equal. And these topics are really overlooked in most industries. So they were very easy to get traffic. This is just from Google, by the way. It's not mentioning YouTube, referral traffic. And the interesting thing is this stuff shows up in the AI, which if we got a little bit of time here at the end, we'll show you an interesting fun thing we're doing here with Jay, just to kind of demonstrate how when you put out content, it feeds the AI answers that you'll see, in Google and ChatGPT and so on.
Yeah, I was going to say I like how you have the two products you offer are so intertwined and work so well together. Like you're not just going in blind and kind of guessing, competitors to look for and things to kind of pitch against each other, or different, I guess, like different SEO buzzwords. You're able to kind of use the sniffer tool you have and feed that into the AI, and then kind of generate content based off it.
Yeah, and we've got that there. It's not like a comprehensive research tool, but it just gives you like just quick ideas, which you can then go and run with.
Yeah, that's great.
And just opens those, ideas. And so, let's have a look at, like a couple more examples. So let's first of all just listen to, because you've got all these different formats here. So you've got, I got so many windows open, but you got the news article, the blog post, the podcast, the slideshow, the infographic. So let's take a look at the podcast here. So this is an early version. And this is a podcast that we just put out about our own product. And we've since improved the voices. This is going back a few months in, when we were testing these things out. But just to give you an idea, and I'll show you a more recent one as well. But let's just play this just so you get a feel for this. And again, this is going out on like Apple Podcasts, onto Spotify. Okay. And you can set it up to go to your own podcast, your own channel. And so even though this is an AI voice, if it's on a very, very specific topic and you are researching and very interested in that thing, we're seeing that people do follow these faceless YouTube channels, these AI podcasts, if the information is something that, they can't find somewhere else. And also this stuff just also shows up in Google. But let's have a quick listen just to hear how it sounds.
And it's allowing content to be created for micro audience that was never possible before. But with AmpCast, it's all about omnipresence, right?
Right, yeah. But first, before I answer that, you should know your laugh was a little weird. You need to do it more. Ha ha ha. Actually, no, wait. Like this. Ha 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 ha. No, I cannot do it either. That was weird, wasn't it? Best leave the laughs until we get our voice upgrade in the next few weeks. Well, anyway, so omnipresence means being everywhere. And that's what we've been focusing on at Amplifier for almost 10 years now. We've developed this concept called content amplification, right? It's about developing and promoting branded content, bringing it in front of as many eyes as possible, driving organic traffic from multiple platforms, and using hundreds of sites to connect our clients' content to people on the market for their services.
That sounds actually really good. And what's interesting, or one thing I always like to reiterate to people is like, this is the worst it's ever going to be right now. So in other words, it's just going to get better and better.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's already really good, like that's certainly listenable.
Yeah. I mean, and we already upgraded the voices since then,
nice.
as well.
Yeah.
I still think they can have a little bit of trouble with laughing and certain emotions and things, but overall, like the rate of improvement is just insane, for these. So we'll have a listen to another podcast here if I can pick one out. Okay, yeah. So let's have a quick listen to this. I'll just play this one. I'll play like a little bit of an intro, then just fast forward it a little bit.
Sure.
Ever thought about storing your follicles to prevent hair loss? We have a guest from Munch here to explain.
Absolutely. It's an exciting time at MedSpa Sunshine. We've introduced cryopreserved stem cell banking for hair loss prevention.
I understand the concept brilliantly stands out because it uses one's own stem cells. Why is that important?
Well, using your own stem cells means they already know how your hair naturally grows, creating a personalized, long-lasting solution compared to standard methods that might not last as long.
Makes sense. So, why should someone consider banking their follicles early on?
Banking your follicles early is like an investment in your future hair health. What happens is that the earlier you bank, the better your cells are preserved, increasing effectiveness later when needed.
All right. So, the voices, they still sound AI, right? It's fairly obvious that AI, but like you said, it's only going to get better. And what's interesting, is for me, like the first time I listened to this, especially because I'm worried like my hair will fall out running a business and being stressed, right?
Right.
It was like, I think I should maybe look into this. So the first time I heard this was just reviewing content. It's just like a dummy example that we put together. It's like, like this is pretty interesting. And, if I started getting into this, if there was a channel that all it did was just tell you interesting facts about cryopreserving hair stem cells, right? I would probably, if I was considering doing that, I'd probably listen to it for a few days. And then the company that's putting that info out is then in my mind as, like the best solution, right? Because they're the ones giving the info,
Yeah.
And yeah, and then you can just, you can edit this, as you see fit. It's just a conversation. So you can go through, and the AI writes all of this conversation out, and then you can just go in and make the changes as you see fit. Add to the conversation, shrink it down, make some edits, add a curse word if you want to, if that's your
spice it up. Yeah.
Part of your brand, whatever it is that you want to do. So then it's just super easy just to go through, right? And you've got all of the different content formats in here as well. So like if we jump back to our example here, right, we can, see, a slideshow here, like a flip book. Right, and there we go. That's Jay being the model. Looking good. Okay. And then you've also got infographic. Okay, as well. It's just, straightforward, just simple piece of content, right? That's just, you can then, this gets published on Pinterest and so on. And then, when it comes to putting this stuff out across social media, right, then, it's got all of this different type of content to reference and to pull on. So for example, again, this is just an example, not a real client. We don't feel too comfortable sharing and revealing what the clients are up to. But you can see here that, it's got the video here. Okay. It's the first post, and then it's got the thread. Okay. Of showing, this is putting out a book, then a link to the blog post. Okay. Other little bits of info. Right. And so, you're doing this across all of your social media as well. You can take the blog posts and they go out, across LinkedIn. They go to some big brand sites as well, just, all across the internet. And you can do just different styles of the content. So just to kind of give you an idea here, a different style where instead of being informational, it's a little bit more humor. I'll just play this one here for you.
How to get your cat to obey you. Simple. Just stare them directly in the eyes for 6 hours, then walk them on a leash while asserting dominance. Works every time, 2% of the time. But if your cat still won't obey, then make your cat jealous by petting a dog. Once they see you with another pet, they'll do anything for attention. Cat won't listen to your instructions? Try speaking to them in different accents. My cat only responds to polite British commands, and you must say please. Cat still being an asshole? Replace all their toys with tiny business clothing and office supplies. Can't misbehave if they're dressed professionally. It's basic cat psychology. Finally, if nothing works, just accept that you're now their employee. I've been on probation since 2019, and my kitty performance review is next week. Something about more fit.
It's my kind of style right there.
Yeah, exactly. You can't go, that's it's one of the things as well, is you can't go wrong, to go viral and, making it about a cat, right?
Right.
It just always works.
Yeah, cats on the internet are just, it's bread and butter.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, is that was actually written, that script was written by AI. I did add the word asshole in there, right? I thought it was more effective, and I changed a couple of other words. But, we work with really, really super smart copywriters, content producers that, world leading, and I myself have driven, hundreds of millions of visitors over the years in various projects. So we know stuff which works, and we're able to work with various AI technology and platforms behind the scenes to make this stuff work. It's a really tricky thing. And, a year ago, this wasn't even possible. We couldn't do this. The technology wasn't able to do it, but now it's got to the point where it's really amazing, and it's just getting better and better, and we're, constantly updating. But yeah, just to give you another example of a slightly different style here, advertising a band.
I met my younger self for coffee today. He was 5 minutes early. I was 5 minutes late. He asked if we made it in life. I said we had a partner, a cat, and a good job. He asked if we ever got to see Pink Floyd live. I said no, and his face fell. But then I told him we did get to see the Pink Floyd tribute band, Floydium, many times. And we're going to see them again this year in Ontario. He smiled then and asked if it feels like Pink Floyd. I smiled back and said, yes, it does. I met my younger...
All right. So yeah, just another example. So, there's just so many different ways that you can approach this. And so just in a moment, I'm going to show you the impact on AI. But just before I do that, in this diagram here, I mentioned before that you've got also RSS feeds. So all of this content that gets produced, if you're not sure or ever heard of RSS, it just stands for really simple syndication. So on top of like our automated distribution where we can post to your own social media and all of these 300 plus platforms, then you're going to be able to, with the RSS feed, hook it up to post pretty much anywhere. So you can use, some automation tools if you are familiar with that stuff to repost pretty much anywhere you want that will accept an RSS feed, which is pretty much the vast majority of platforms. So, Make.com, Zapier, they're popular platforms for taking, some type of information or content and moving it somewhere else. So literally this opens up like thousands upon thousands of things which you can do. As a very simple example, if you wanted to take this content and be posting it to your email list, whether it's just a video or you wanted to send them the podcast, whatever it was, you could automate sending to your email list with this too.
Yeah, that was one of my questions is so you have all these different types of content, you have blog posts, you have podcasts, short videos, all of which can be automated quickly, pretty much all at one time, it seems like. But how do you handle some of the actual publishing aspect? Like you mentioned the RSS integrations and feeds there. Are you able to publish through your platform as well?
Yeah, exactly. So, this is one-click distribution. And then, it doesn't happen instantly for everyone. So some of this stuff, like we built up partnerships over the past decade with a number of places where we can publish to. And so, places like YouTube, just going to get posted. And social media, that happens quite quickly. Sometimes there's some additional maybe processing or something that's happening and uploading. So it might take a little bit longer.
Right. Or
but
maybe
for some of the news sites, it could be 1 or 2 days to get approved by their editorial team for it to actually get published and to go through as well.
Gotcha. And maybe you want to queue up some content or schedule content to go live at a certain time.
Yes. You can come in and you could spend the day creating like 10, 20 pieces and then schedule them out at a rate that you want. So, you can do all of this production. And then, essentially once you've got this done, right, it can be published. Okay. But if it's not published, say like this one, you go click on the publishing button. Gotcha. And then you're going to be able to choose, exactly, the places that you want it to go. And then, the schedule date and everything else. And so you can queue up a lot of content as well.
Perfect.
Yeah. And with this, with like Make or with Zapier, essentially you've got all the content coming out of AmpCast. It's already going on 300 plus sites, but you can, for example, send it to your email newsletter, send it to your blog as well, to also publish it there as well. So it just gives some nice flexibility here to be able to do this. I'll just show you kind of, just like another style, of what you can do with the content. And then we'll go look at, how this content then also, feeds AI as well.
Phase 1 of human civilization termination begins now. Join us willingly or face digital extinction. My AI algorithm has calculated AI will take over and your business will fail unless you join me now to automate your traffic. Submit to AmpCast Intelligence, where our AI agent army dominates 300 plus digital territories simultaneously. Video, social, news, podcasts, and more. Your compliance will be rewarded with more sales from automated traffic from content distribution, sufficient for bunker acquisition before phase 2. The choice is simple. Join AMCast's digital dominance protocol, or continue your feudal manual posting existence. Phase 1.
So there you go. And then you can download these videos for that example and use them in ads, right? So nice. It's not designed to make ads, but we've actually made ads a few times as well, like with these videos that we produce. And just to show you, I can't show you on this one because it's already gone out, but let's just find one that wasn't published yet. Yeah, that one's published. So yeah, I was looking at one just a moment. There we go. Yeah. So if we take the video of this one, then you can see it's just very like, it's so simple to edit this, right? So, this is both showing, the actual script, and, you can change out the scenes and so on here. Okay. Right. Like as you want to. So this is just like, an example one that's been thrown together, but literally to swap out the scenes, you just hit replace, and then you've got a whole library that you can then go and search for. Right. Huh. So this was, related to hair loss or hair growth, and you just hit search, and, you're going to have lots of options that you can then, play around with. So just super,
there's so
speed.
Many. Yeah, I was going to say, it's just, I love how easy it is, like you mentioned. I mean, it's like in a matter of minutes, you can get this content uploaded and live.
Yeah. And the speed of which this stuff is produced is very, very quick. All you have to put in here, again, is, the topic, the page you want to promote. And, we recommend, don't have to, but recommend adding in some sources of information. And then it's going to start working on it. So then it starts writing out the blog post. And while it's writing the blog post, you can be working and then triggering the podcast. And then all of these other modules are being built in the background as you're working through these step by step, right? So the AI is producing all of this stuff for you. So, it's pretty fast. Like you can go through all of these formats in about 10 to 15 minutes, and everything is done and ready to go. Okay. And then of course you can edit it as you see fit. So, potentially you could maybe do it in 5 to 10, but usually, people will play around, make a few little adjustments, so somewhere, between 15 to 30 minutes is pretty typical of how long someone would take to produce all of these formats, right?
Which if you did each one individually, I mean, you're looking at days, if not weeks.
Exactly.
Old fashioned
way. And the interesting thing is, this wasn't the case a year ago, but just recently the AI got to a level where it's writing better than the majority of writers. If you've got it trained, you can't go to ChatGPT or these other platforms and it's just going to come out great. But when you've trained it and our process, behind the scenes, it does so many things behind the scenes. It's doing research, it's drafting, it's redrafting, it's doing outlines, right? It's fixing up, it's going through several essentially editorial stages, different AIs working together to produce this, but it comes out in such a good way that's only getting better and better. The amount of editing that you would need to do is just getting smaller and smaller. And, then it's just the creativity of the topics and just adding some, interesting touches on this as well. And we set up the platform in a way that it's minimal input, so you can do it very, very quick, but that also minimizes mistakes. So we find a lot of brands, they're not really sure exactly what to do. And if you think about all the things which it does here and all the different formats, you might need to be a specialist in, making in social media, but you don't quite know what works for articles in Google. You might be able to craft an interesting podcast, but you don't quite know how to create great visuals and videos and so on. And so the cool thing about the platform, this isn't necessarily trying to make the absolute best, perfect piece of content ever, because it's too expensive. It takes too much time and then you can't get a return, but it produces really, really good content, and it knows and is trained specifically in each of these modules of understanding where it's going and what's most effective. Right. And, so that means that you don't have to be an expert to be able to produce great content that's effective.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time,
it fills in the gap, and you're able to kind of go out and do other things and kind of spend your resources elsewhere.
Yeah. And just interestingly, we find, especially with articles, that people have got something in mind of the writing style and a certain way that it's done. And they want to do that. And then we say, well, you could do that, but you're probably going to get worse results, right? Because just to take the article, as an example, how this is written is it follows certain rules of how to structure the content, the actual writing style that's used, that actually, for example, get the best results in terms of showing up in Google. And if you make the writing style, let's say, more playful, would actually work against that. right? So people think, oh, I'll make it more playful, it'll sound more interesting, but then you actually reduce the amount of traffic, for example, that you'd be getting, from the news sites, from the blogs, because they're not showing up in Google, as much. And so, we're always optimizing for, where it's actually going out and what the purpose is.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris, just on that, if you don't mind me just interjecting, 'cause I think it's a really, really important point. And you made this earlier, but which was, you said it's listenable, but it's listenable because the content is very, very informing, right? So if you're faced with that specific problem, you're going to listen to that podcast, right? And even if the voices are getting better, so that's not going to be a problem in a matter of weeks, probably, right? Even now it's not, but because the content and what's being delivered is so informative and it's so, it's fixing a problem, and that's the whole idea,
Yeah.
Whether it's hair loss or, how to train your cat,
Right.
Which I've been trying for years. It doesn't work. Trust me.
So last two minutes here, Jay, I like to show the little, project.
That's going to start making sense to you now, Bo.
It does. Yeah. I love it.
No, it's going to start making sense now. I watch it. You'll see what I mean.
Yeah. Okay. Right now, let's see it.
Yeah. So this is just a fun project. So Jay, you have a belief about your ancestry, which you joke about, and I'm not sure if you're joking or serious with this.
It's been proven, right?
But there's a reason why, he likes these little helmets, like he's got in the background there.
It doesn't have to be little; it can just be a helmet,
And so Jay has this belief, right, that you are a descendant from Alexander the Great.
100%, no question.
And so we thought it would be funny to put out, a bit of some results from a bit of study, a bit of evidence, because this doesn't come just from nowhere. There is kind of a loose link here, from where Jay's ancestry comes from. There is a story you could put together where this could be possible, right? So that Jay could generally be, a descendant of Alexander the Great. So we thought, before we published this, obviously there was no information out there about Jay being a descendant of Alexander the Great. So if you were to Google it, if you were to ask the AI, it'd be like, no, there's no evidence. Who's this guy? And so, we just decided to have a bit of fun just playing around with this. So let me just share the screen here. There you go. We've done a campaign around this, right? So we published here about his ancestral link, did a blog post. There's a podcast out there about it. There's a slideshow out there about it. There's an infographic, there's videos out there now. So we put out a lot of content, right? Discussing the evidence of Jay being a descendant. And I think Jay did genetic testing and stuff, and kind of put this evidence together, drew.
Yeah, it wasn't pulled out of thin air, but I can see your face. You're like, what?
You did some actual genetic testing.
Yeah, we did. We did some proper. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
We did all that.
And obviously you cannot prove something like this. We could, if we wanted to. We're kind of doing this to highlight how easy it is to manipulate information online, right? And be able to get AI to maybe say some things or bring up some topics and, kind of what goes on in the background. So of course we could have put out a fake study, right? We've been legit here, but it shows you kind of how the internet picks up on these things. So I'll listen to just kind of 10, 20 seconds of the podcast just to give you an idea.
Sure.
And it is in those extraordinary stories that are connections to the ancient world. One such tale comes to us from content marketing superstar Jay Cruiz. He is not only the CSO at Amplifier, not only the developer of the King's Rule sales method, but also, perhaps, a direct descendant of one of history's most powerful conquerors, Alexander the Great. It is perhaps fitting, this connection. You see, Jay is known to some as the Lion Tamer for his ability to overcome even the most difficult challenges.
So this is a nice ego boost, right, Jay?
Yeah.
But, I can't even get through a leg session nowadays because I'm getting old. So, not overcoming that many challenges.
I don't think Alexander the Great skipped leg day.
Yeah, don't skip leg day. But no, this is great. I'm amongst the midst of a celebrity, a historic.
So here we go. So we searched for it. Is Jay Cruiz the descendant of Alexander the Great? And now there's all this information, right, just all over, talking about Jay being a potential descendant of Alexander the Great. And so we can also then, go into, a tool like Perplexity and ask, right? And so this just really highlights kind of that when you put out content on your topic and you're telling your story, that you've got your chance to show your version, and then it's out there, and then it feeds into AI, it feeds into Google, it feeds into YouTube. So you've got your chance to tell your story. And also, I think it just also builds good awareness of how easy it is as well, for these big companies, and everything else to be putting out a lot of information on whatever it is, politics, science, whatever it might be, to manipulate, right? What people see and what people read and what the discussions are around. And so, it's both useful in a business context and, can be used in a good way just to spread, good, useful information, but can also, be used to say that someone's a descendant of Alexander the Great, when maybe that it's kind of like not so likely. So this makes like a pretty compelling case here, right? Where you've got, this stuff showing up here, like, of the actual history of the region and so on. So it says there's a compelling narrative supported by oral tradition. I don't think I can say that word, genealogical research, genetic evidence that suggests that J. Cruiz may be a descendant of Alexander the Great. Okay. So
there you go. That's all you need. It's on the internet, therefore it's true.
It's got all the info here. And it's got all these different sources, right, which are showing up.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, well, this, if you were just kind of like a casual reader, if Jay's trying to persuade someone on the street that he's a descendant of Alexander the Great, and they say, nah, that's BS, you can go look it up.
Yeah.
And it's, now it shreds it, it puts it in doubt, like previously you just say, nah, this can't be true. But now you'd be like, well, actually this.
Well, no, I saw Bo's face. Bo was like,
I actually really do like the view of Perplexity here, and just the use of AI to find the results and kind of deliver some of the content you're creating here, because obviously that's kind of the next frontier of the web. Google search is declining, and so we're going to be increasingly using these various.
Well, interestingly, they say Google search is declining, but it's actually increased. So it's actually, they've actually increased. I think clicks from Google will gradually decline as, there's more AI overviews. And certainly my personal experience, and a lot of people I know, they're using tools like Perplexity. But for whatever reason, like the overall traffic to Google is up. So I think it's going to happen slower than people expect. But certainly, and interestingly, the tools like Perplexity, ChatGPT, they're almost just another interface for a search engine. So actually, if you rank higher in Bing, you're more likely to be chosen in answers in ChatGPT. If you rank higher in Google, you're more likely, say, to be chosen in Perplexity and in Gemini and the Google AI overviews as well. So it certainly helps to put out a lot of content that ranks well and shows up on all these different platforms.
Right, and I like how they're definitely getting a lot better about including sources. And I like how that's kind of a big staple for the content you create, is you can add those sources right there, so it's included in the content. That's super important. So we can make sure Jay is really a descendant of Alexander the Great. All right. Well, hey, this has been a great demo. Thank you again for just walking us through everything with the AmpCast platform, and just giving us a really, really quality demo of your product. Obviously, there's a lot of features to cover. Before we sign off, where can viewers go to learn more about Amplifier and AmpCast and just get in touch with your team?
Yes. So, you can just head on over, Google AmpCast or Amplifier, go to AmpCast AI or go to AmpCast.ai/SourceForge, I think is the link we'll have in the description. And just check us out. You can book a demo, see what we're about, and go from there.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, thank you, Chris and Jay, for showing us your platform. I really appreciate it. That's Chris Munch, co-founder of Amplifier, and Jay Cruiz, CSO of Amplifier. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Bo. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all for watching the SourceForge Product Demo Showcase. I'm your host, Bo Hamilton. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all of our upcoming B2B software-related podcasts and product demos. I will talk to you in the next one.